I'll let you know in 1 minute. Give me 1 second just to check if we are live on LinkedIn. Live now, yes. So we are live, you can start anytime.
Thank you, Anka.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Eva Enyedi. I'm an EIT Climate-KIC Water Scarcity Project Manager, and I will be your host today. This seminar is going to focus on governance and finance solutions to tackle water scarcity in Southern Europe. And before I start, I would like to share my screen, so just 1 second. Can someone confirm that you can see my screen well? Maybe Guido.
Yes, it is perfect.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this seminar today is co-hosted with Water Europe, and we are very grateful for their support for the 5th seminar in a row to be co-hosted together within the Water Scarcity Initiative. The context of this seminar is the EIT Water Scarcity Community, which is a cross-KIC project delivered by 4 of the European Institute of Innovation and Technologies Knowledge and Innovation Communities. It is led by EIT Food, with collaboration from EIT Climate-KIC, the organization I represent, with collaboration as well from EIT Manufacturing and EIT Digital. We also receive support from external organizations such as BioSol, Athena Research Center, and TU Delft. This project applies a multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary approach. We have supported almost 70 entrepreneurs in the last 3 years, 10 companies who were looking for different solutions to their water problems, and also organized educational and communication events. But a large part of the program has been focusing on creating and disseminating knowledge about water scarcity in Southern Europe. The Body of Knowledge Expert Group, which the group I have been leading for the last 2 years, has been set up in 2020 with the aim to gather and disseminate knowledge about the status of water scarcity and potential solutions to it in Southern Europe. In 2020, a group of 15 experts identified the 5 biggest challenges Southern Europe faced when tackling water scarcity. In 2021, a new group of 15 experts continued this work and delivered 2 high-level publications. One of them was focusing on describing the available financial instruments for water entrepreneurs, and a white paper describing governance, finance, and technological solutions to water scarcity. On my screen, you can see the front pages of both publications and the QR code, which will lead you to the sites where you can download these 2 publications. Before we start the discussion, I would really like to emphasize some of the main concepts that we tackled in the white paper. This is a very comprehensive document which describes the status of water scarcity in Southern Europe, and also looked at the problems and the potential solutions which are available to solve this issue. This included, as I said, governance solutions, finance and technology solutions as well. However, this summer, public attention has been drawn to the issue of water due to the severe droughts impacting many parts of Europe. However, the white paper also explained that water scarcity and drought are not the same. They are quite similar, and they occur simultaneously frequently. However, water scarcity is characterized by human overexploitation of fresh water for both human and environmental use. It is a long-term imbalance, which is structural in between supply and demand of fresh water. Water scarcity is also driven by a number of different factors. Of course, climate and its seasonal variability influences water scarcity. We use more water when there is less available over the summer months, which is also driven by the demand for water in different peaks of the year, which is also influenced by population growth and density. The white paper has also found that there is a lack of sustainable governance approaches to water management, which is coupled with different water quality conditions that may restrict the use of fresh water. During these couple of months, in collaboration with Water Europe, we have set up a series of thematic seminars to describe the findings of the white paper. And today is the last and fifth seminar discussing governance and finance solutions. But in the very beginning, we started with an introductory seminar in beginning of June to describe the drivers of water scarcity, the impact of water scarcity has in different society, economy, and environment. And we also looked at some solutions already there. End of June, we looked into the intersection between water pollution and water scarcity. In July, we discussed the different circular economy solutions to water scarcity, including decentralized and centralized approaches. In September, we discussed digital and smart solutions to water scarcity. And finally, because all of these seminars reconfirmed that governance and finance solutions are essential to advance in tackling water scarcity, we decided to focus our last seminar on these solutions. Of course, there are many solutions we could discuss, which are detailed in the white paper, but today we will focus on three main topics. And three of the body of knowledge expert group experts are here today who will do short presentations. Stella Zani will focus on total cost recovery, but also will discuss whether water is a public or a private good, which will be followed by a presentation by Guido Schmidt, who will discuss illegal water extractions and ways to tackle it. And finally, Enrique Mesa Perez will discuss water rights, whether capping water rights can be a potential solution to water scarcity. The presentations will be followed by a discussion panel where the experts will be joined by external participants, Gary Villalanda Sokolova from ERO and Rafael Seiz from the World Wide Fund, Spain. We would also like to thank other experts from the Body of Knowledge Expert Group who contributed to this event, Alban Lica, Amparo Sereno, and Talei. And with that, I would like to give the words to Stella.
Thank you, Eva. Just making sure that you can all hear me. I sound good? Okay, thank you for that. Good afternoon from Greece. Allow me to start this presentation by saying how extremely grateful and happy I am for being part of this large project and contributing to not only the white paper and the financing tools document that we have prepared, but also to the mentoring of the startups, the scale-ups, and the discussions that we've had with problem holders. Is all these things that Eva showed in brief are just a glimpse of the vast amount of work and knowledge that has been done and has been generated in this project. So I urge you, I strongly encourage you to have a look at the white paper and the financing tools and solutions documents that provide very good information and insights for policymakers, for researchers, for business entities that are interested in the subjects of water. And in this project, in the last 3 years, we have worked intensively in a set of issues and challenges related to water scarcity. Today we have limited time, and we will focus in a couple of these challenges. And I have the honor to focus and to discuss and to share with you the insights that our team provides in the governance paper, in the white paper, sorry, with regards to the concept of total water cost recovery. So Eva, if I may start with a question that is outlined in this slide, whether water is a public or a private good. And being an economist myself, I will try to answer this from an economics perspective. And in economics, we have a very strict definition of what is considered a public good and what is a private good. So public good come with almost close to zero marginal costs of providing to one more user, and also would come with non-excludability case. At the same time, water can be considered a private good because, once it is used by someone, it has implications and it cannot be used by another user, while at the same time can also be considered a public good, as provision to one individual does not prevent others from using water. So the question on the nature of water, whether it's a public or a private good, raises concerns on the market-based loan management of the water resources and highlights the importance of governance for the fair and efficient allocation of water in a manner that ensures intra and intergenerational as well as cross-sectoral prudent management of and fair allocation of water. So starting with a bit of economics, as water remains a natural resource in increasing scarcity in a market-based system, the allocation should come or would come from the interaction of demand and supply that set the equilibrium price at which resources, and in this case water, should be traded and an economically efficient quantity should be consumed. Nevertheless, the many unique characteristics of water render the market-based mechanism unable to reach efficient allocation of water resources. And this is important because the price that we get from the interaction of demand and supply can be considered as an incentive provider or as an indication on the costs and the benefits that individuals derive from the consumption of the goods. So if this information is not full and complete, we may end up with over or under consumption. In the case of water, it's rather the case of overconsumption. So in this regard, water governance refers to the set of the socioeconomic and policy systems that determine water resources management and competitive uses among different users, whether are agricultural consumers, residential consumers, or industry. So in this regard, governance regards all the interventions in the market that correct for the inefficiency in water use that may be the result of inefficient prices that market forces may leave us with. Next slide, please, Eva. In the case of total cost of water use, first of all, we need to define what this total cost of water use is that cost estimation, that cost component that includes all the different costs that are related to the use of water. And these costs can be related to the financial cost, to the environmental cost, and the resource cost. And I will explain in a bit what these components regard. In the case of water price, the price that we pay is often estimated on based on water demand and water supply costs, and that comes with infrastructure, collection, treatment, and distribution costs. This may lead to inefficient allocation of water due to the fact that in large the environmental and the resource costs are not taken into consideration. And by this, I mean that total cost recovery should address and should respond to the necessity to identify and monetize not just the operation and maintenance cost, but also the opportunity cost of water use, what is called the resource cost, and also the cost of the environmental externalities. Think, for instance, water quality degradation or water non-availability for other services that result from water use. In this regard, and given that in large the pricing systems that we have employed so far do not include environmental and resource costs, we need to come up with solutions and approaches on how to identify, to monetize, and to incorporate these environmental and resource costs in the final price that the different users, whether agriculture, industry, or households, pay for water. Next slide, please. Now, in saying this and in linking water pricing with governance of water, economists in general recognize and understand well the complexity that is inherent in the management of water and how this impacts on governance and on decisions and policies that have to do with water pricing. Aspects that are related to water use and long-term impacts of water use, to the impact of wastewater generation, changes in runoff patterns, cultural, aesthetic, ethical dimensions of water, just to name a few, are can be and are neglected in many practical cases for current and future generations. So water pricing and also water governance has to address all these issues. And of course, this is not a straight forward task to complete. Next slide, please, Eva. On top of these governance complexities, we have also challenges that relate to the very practical aspects of estimating and incorporating the total cost recovery and total cost of water use in water prices that end users pay. And these challenges are linked not only to the ease of identification of the different cost components, but also to the ease of the monetization of these cost components. And here, financial costs that are linked to the operation or maintenance cost of the system, of the water provision system, may be easier to monetize. But when we consider resource costs or environmental costs, then the challenges are much more complex and difficult to overcome. And these challenges have to do not only with the methodology that it is employed, but also with the data availability. In methodological terms, economists have developed different approaches, methodological approaches to estimate, to monetize these different costs. However, these still come with implementation difficulties and administrative costs that may add up on the efforts to monetize these different components. From a methodological perspective, also total cost recovery necessitates all those costs that are not incorporated, but also in a way that it makes sense to the end user, and it's convincing for the end user to pay this true cost of water use. And this comes with governance challenges that have to do with the understanding of the need to have full cost recovery, and also the understanding of the implications of this total cost incorporation on the fair and just allocation of the resource. From a governance perspective, priority should be given to developing an integrated approach to water management, one that incorporates not just the economic, but also the social and environmental value of water, as well as of the impact of the implemented measures. And in a bit, I will give you some practical, well, not really practical, but examples of the different approaches that can be employed in order to have incorporation of the costs in the final price, and what does this in practice mean in achieving total cost recovery. And of course, implementation of total cost recovery comes with development implications. As from a development perspective, we need to look at the social and economic factors that relate to water management, but also at the wider regional and socioeconomic as well as global efforts to achieve sustainable economic growth, because all this discussion now about understanding the true cost of water use and incorporating them in the final price has implications for the ability of the agents, of the different users, of the different sectors that use water to comply with SDG targets, with sustainable development targets, and also to support the economy-wide and society-wide efforts to meet them, including also sustainable water use in these efforts. Next slide, please, Emma. Now, at the European level, we have a series of policies dating back in 1980s that put several water management directives at the forefront and push forward for a more proper or prudent management, if I may say, of the water resources. Nevertheless, it's not until the 2000 and the EU Water Framework Directive that all these efforts bring forward a first-time systematic approach to water management that addresses at the same time all the different pressures and the different stressors on water, whether environmental, social, and economic. And the implementation of the EU Water Framework Directive that coincides with the signing of the UN Agenda to 2030 and the commitment to the 17 SDG targets is also a first-time explicit realization that economic tools and economic principles should be included in the water management and water governance practices. So two things to consider here. First, that total cost recovery becomes for the first time an explicit target, and also this target serves not only EU level policy targets, but also regional and global targets of sustainable development. Next slide, please, Eva. So as I said earlier, and connecting this discussion to practical approaches to meeting total cost recovery or to incorporating in the market price of water the different cost components of water use, we have seen here by looking at the different EU countries or at different examples worldwide, different approaches to pricing water. These can include fixed charges through water bills, irrespective of the volume of water consumed, uniform volumetric tariffs that apply same rate charges to water consumption, irrespective of the total amount of water consumed, increasing or decreasing stepwise volumetric charges where volumes of water are priced at the same rate in volumes, in blocks, in an increasing or decreasing manner, or two-part tariffs that have both a fixed and a variable charge component. So in terms of approaches to pricing, and in terms of flexibility of what can be applied and what can be charged in each case, exist already. But here are the particularities and the limitations in efficient setting that play a much more important role in deciding in the end of the day what would be the best approach to meet total cost recovery through different pricing systems. And in saying that, I just want to highlight here why we bring forward these different approaches and what targets in the end of the day these approaches should meet beyond meeting total cost recovery. And these approaches should be the monetization, so the computational and management convenience and affordability, and also the cost allocation that can be done in a fair and meeting at the same time full cost recovery targets. And third, incentive provisioning, so having transparency, having accountability, having all those components in the pricing approaches that convince the end users on the fairness and the necessity of the different cost components included in the prices that they pay. And last slide, Eva, please. To wrap up here and to conclude, we have been discussing about what does it mean, total cost of water use, what are the different approaches and what are the complexities in governance that is linked to meeting total cost recovery targets. But also we need to conclude or to highlight, not to close this short presentation by not referring to the implications of meeting total cost recovery. Already I referred to the implications that this approach can have in fair and just allocation of costs and the burden, but also we should highlight the implications that these approaches and total cost recovery can have at the national, regional, and also sectoral level, because the costs of water are those costs that in the end of the day will impact on the competitiveness of the different sectors and also on the availability and the ease of access of the different users to the resource. So on one side, we have this kind of issues that need to be addressed, issues that in several cases may come up against a frustration or or a need of the public to accept this higher cost, but at the same time may bring us closer to environmental sustainability and resilience, because once we understand the total cost of the use of the resource, then we can make better informed decisions on how to use the resource and how to allocate it between different users and between different generations. So it's quite important for environmental sustainability and resilience, I'm repeating these two words, to understand and to incorporate in a transparent and in a complete manner the achievement of total cost of water use in the final prices. And to close with two words that are used also in the beginning of my presentation, having in the end of the day water prices that include all the costs and the benefits that are linked to water use guarantee good signals and good incentive provisioning to the end users of the resource. So the implications with regards to incentive provision are quite important and should be kept in mind when discussing the need and the approaches to meeting total cost recovery. And with this, I close my part and I pass the ball to Guido. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. I will be talking about illegal water use. Illegal water use is usually one of the unknowns or ignored pieces of water management. But in quite some areas, and especially in some areas which I have been working on, I'm based in Madrid, so good afternoon from Madrid. In some of these areas, it's a major problem. So we shouldn't forget about it simply because this. And the best, as I said here, let's start with a film so you get some idea, or get some ideas about what it means.
Doñana National Park in southern Spain is home to one of Europe's largest wetlands and is being threatened by intensive farming. Scientists say water supplies to the park have declined dramatically due to climate change and the over-extraction of water by neighboring strawberry farms, often through illegal wells. This issue strongly divides those who wish to preserve the park and the farmers.
The over-exploitation of groundwater will destroy the wetlands of Doñana if there are no radical changes. And radical changes would involve stopping the over-exploitation of the aquifer, closing wells. That's what the administration has to do, not extracting so much water. They need to limit the current extractions, reduce them by half.
The crops need the water they need. In the municipality of Almonte, we have over 4,000 hectares of irrigated land. If they reduce the water allocation by half, we would have to reduce the crop by half. We would have to reduce over 2,000 hectares of cultivation. This is a real ruin.
Rafael Segovia, president of the Spanish far-right party Vox, refutes claims that the natural preserve is in danger and proposes a solution which environmentalists disagree with.
In Huelva, there isn't a water problem. It's a lie, an artificial problem that has been created. Doñana will not be in danger if we do these works. The problem has a straightforward solution, which is to transfer water from the El Chanza River to the Condado. It's as easy as that.
It's a solution, but its days are numbered, because when there is a lack of rain, it's everywhere. Climate change is affecting us and it's affecting the water levels. We need to rethink the model in Doñana.
At this time of year, the park should be covered in water and host to pink flamingos. It is the home to thousands of species of flora and fauna and has over 100,000 hectares of lagoons, forests and marshes. However, the World Heritage Site is facing an uncertain future due to human activity and questionable political decisions.
Many thanks. And then we step into the next slide. So what I'm trying to do is answer some of the questions which you might have on illegal water use. And I mean, it's clear that I mean, in Doñana there was no figure, but the estimations are that 1/5, 1/5, 1/3 of the extractions are illegal. So if we don't talk about illegals, then we have a big problem in water management. The first question I want to address is, where do we face illegal water use and how much does illegal water use mean? some years ago we gathered some information from some countries, and I would say there's almost no country in the world which doesn't have a problem with illegal water use. In some countries more, in others less. And you can see this graph here from the European Court of Auditors report in 2021, which you can see on the left side, which shows that for some of the countries or regions which they assessed, and they just work with 2 different sources of data, but there are many more sources of data which you can use. There are figures between a 0.4% in Germany, for example, and a 22% in some part of Spain, in Castilla-Mancha, for example. And you can also see that there are several areas where there are no data available. And this also shows us that there is a problem with finding these data. Then if we go to the next slide, we have some. The next question might be, why do we have illegal water use? I mean, why is this taking place? The first, there are 3 major components of this, and there are many more sub-elements here, and we've tried just only to highlight a few of them to make it simple. But of course, in the white paper, you can find much more information, much more details about the illegal water use and how to deal with it. First, it's social norms. Many people just accept that there's a non-compliance, and we just have to live with it, and there's no major problem. And if your neighbor is doing something wrong, maybe you just accept it. The second and very important part, and there's a lot of what governance and management can do, is that there are gaps in the governance and in the institutions. So there's a distrust in the water regulation because there's no control of the abstractions. There is bribery and corruption, especially in the Guadalquivir, we had a new case popping up just only a couple of weeks ago, and the public functionaries, they got just some hams and some wine bottles in exchange of accessing water rights, for example. And then there's also a lot of lack of human and financial resources in the administration. They don't have enough stuff to go on site and to check whether there is an illegal borehole, or even and then to legally follow up on this. And the third core element is that there are net benefits. So if you use water illegally, you usually gain much more money than what you would lose with the consequences. And this a little bit more detail in the next slide. This is here on the next slide. You can see another graph from that report which I mentioned before, and this is the assessment of the farmers, the irrigators, which got subsidies from the European Union, so CAP subsidies. And there's a check which has to be done, but only 1.2% of the farmers who receive money for irrigation, they are checked, and out of them, 1.5%, they're have an infringement. It's very low level, the 1.5, but also the overall sample is very small. But then what it means for these people, and the information which you can see in the right side, it usually only means that they get a reduction in 3% of the subsidy they receive. So the penalization is very low. It's only less 3% of the subsidies, and very often there are no other consequences, so that the borehole is closed down or they are further punished. So they just have to give away a part of the subsidies which they receive, the money which we all contribute as taxpayers and which farmers get. Then I hope this has illustrated a little bit of the why. Let's go to the next question on the next slide. So why shouldn't we have illegal water use? So what are the consequences of illegal water use? And also here there are 3 key areas which I want to illustrate, and you can see there are many arrows, many more complex issues. But I mean, very often you have an overexploitation of the water resources. Then you have drops in the groundwater levels. This deteriorates, affects the ecosystems like Doñana we have seen, and fosters ecosystem desertification. There's of course also a loss of reputation, because the farmers maybe cannot sell any longer to some of the supermarket chains which are committed to biodiversity protection. There is of course also less water available for other users, and other users which do have water rights. So the illegals are competing with the legals. Then second major point is that we have uncertainty in water abstraction consumption data. So nobody really knows how much water is being taken out of the aquifer. So how can you do a sound water management? And very often just you get new requests for new investments in dams and transfers, as we also saw in the video, from people who don't understand how much is really taken out of the aquifer and how much is being consumed. And the third core aspect is that, I mean, if you use water illegally, why shouldn't you apply similar practices to other aspects, like, for example, land use or employment? And, sometimes, not always, but sometimes these illegal practices are linked to each other. And let's go to the next one. What can we do to tackle illegal water use? The first thing, and I mean, it's the first step is to know where illegal water use is taking place. So you need water, you should have water rights systems. There should be an inventory, a register, or a database of water users. And here I've shown 2 small images, which you can't see very well, but that's the geographic information system of the Guadalquivir River Basin Authority in Spain. And it's a very positive, very front-running exercise where they show they indicate with all the green marks which farmers do have water rights, and then there are blue dots, and you can exactly see from where the water is allowed to be taken. So this helps a lot for neighbors or for other, for example, environmental groups to understand what legal water use means and to follow up on this. And there are also, let's go to the next slide. There are other measures which you can take to tackle illegal water use. And here I put the carrot and the stick. So it needs to be a combination. Only one thing doesn't work. And really, I don't know any experience in Europe or in the world where it has worked perfectly and completely. So there's a lot about raising the awareness of the consequences of overexploitation of water water resources, so people understand what is the harm of it. There shall be positive incentives for the compliance. So who performs good, who is only a legal user, that person should get a label just for doing good practices. We need a lot of capacity building for the water users, so they also know how they can comply with the water abstraction restrictions. I mean, not all the permits which I've seen are very clear, and the farmers, I mean, they often shift the crops between one year and the other one. So what do they mean for them? How many hectares can they irrigate with the water they have allocated? It's not easy for all the farmers. So building capacity is needed here. But then it's also needed to have better law enforcement and control by the water users, by administrative actions, and by legal actions. And this means that there have to be fines, and legal actions even just might mean putting somebody in prison, like, for example, those people linked to corruption. And it's very difficult. There's no blueprint, but there are some nice examples, and some of them are referred to also in the white paper, which I hope that they can help you, guide you in the way forward to tackling illegal water use in your areas. And with this, I end my presentation. I hand forward to Enrique, who will talk to something very much related to illegal water use.
Thank you, Guido, for your presentation. As you said, I will explain how the white paper faced the allocation of water rights. But first of all, I would like to thank the EAT the opportunity to belong to this body of knowledge and to participate with this colleague in this edition. I'm really happy for the opportunity. Well, we are here today to discuss about the governance and finance of water to fight water right. And for that reason, in this case, we are gonna face the allocation of water right. If we can move to the next slide, please, Eva. We will discuss how, till this moment, the white paper identify the most common way water rights are allocated within our countries. We can see that at the end, water availability limits the amount of water that we can distribute within the different users we can find out in our different countries. For that reason, the first element that determine the amount of water that we can distribute and the amount of rights to use water, it's the environmental flow. That means the amount of water we have available. Obviously, this amount of water availability and obviously the rights linked to this water is limited by the priority uses we can find out between the different users. For example, we all know that the cities are more likely to receive or to suffer water cuts because of scarcity or droughts. For example, now in Seville, where I am speaking to you today, we are facing a new drought period of time, and for example, water is limited now for agriculture. The problem is that, I move to the third part of the water allocations. principles is that we don't know till when we have water if we have no rain. For example, if we are suffering a drought period of time, we have the uncertainty to know how much water we will have next year, or we will have available for different uses than the priority ones, like we are at this moment. In this case, this safety buffer is the third element we will have to take into account to know how to allocate the different water rights. But despite we know the three different principles to manage water rights, we are facing a lack of flexibility between all of them. We can be facing situation of scarcity, or maybe we are not still suffering this situation of scarcity. We can predict it in the forthcoming years if the rains does not arrive, and we are not moving because, and we can move to the next slide if you can, Eva. We face different challenges. The first one is this lack of flexibility. We don't know how to face or to improve the reallocation of water rights when we are facing difficult situation of water availability. About this, we also have a lack of strong rules for the reallocation of water rights. That means that we can change who is receiving the water from and who is or who can share this right one to other. Additionally, this is linked to what Guido said before, we also have a deficient information system. We don't actually know the exact number of water and the quality or quantity in the, for example, in the ground, in the aquifer, about groundwater resources, and that doesn't allow to calculate a proper environmental flow to allow a better or improve the allocation of water rights. And finally, obviously, and as we are going to see on the following example, we are facing the political difficulties. We have a lot of different bodies, different stakeholders, and public administration involved in the task of assigning of and allocating water rights, all of them with their own interests, and that makes this problem of this lack of flexibility and this assignment of water rights a difficult situation and a difficult problem. If we move forward, we can see this example from Coca-Cola in Lüneburg, Germany.
Coca-Cola is planning a controversial project to extract water in Lüneburg. Germany's largest beverage company has been bottling its VO brand water in the northern German town for years.
We already have approval to draw 350,000 cubic meters from the aquifer, which is the same amount we put in the application for a third well, to double the amount of water we're taking.
Coca-Cola's quest for water leads to Rettenstedt, just outside Lüneburg. The company is drilling a well 190 meters deep into the earth here, putting the mayor in a dilemma.
Die Frage ist halt nur, wie verkaufen wir auch, oder was heißt verkaufen, wie vermitteln wir das den Bürgerinnen und Bürgern?
The question is simply, how do we sell it? Or rather, how do we communicate to citizens that the groundwater that is actually there to ensure their supply of public drinking water is partially being given to the beverage industry? And then we have to tell citizens what they get in return.
Bürger dann auch vermitteln, was haben sie davon?
Resistance is stirring in the region of Lüneburg. More and more people are protesting against Coca-Cola. More than 1,000 people recently took part in a demonstration organized by Our Water Lüneburg. The initiative fears their water is being sold off.
Dear Lüneburgers, my name is Marianne Temmersfeld and I am also a member of Our Water Lüneburg. I want to stop this well. I want to prevent Coca-Cola from taking any more. And they will say, okay, then we can't produce any more VO.
Dr. Marianne Temmersfeld has been involved in the Citizens Initiative since the beginning of 2020. Local politician Jens Buta issues water extraction permits, even Coca-Cola's. His decision will last for decades.
Letztendlich entscheidend dafür, ob eine Entnahme.
The groundwater authorities in Lüneburg first determine whether extraction is possible, and then we make a decision. That can also mean that we have to make a decision that the town doesn't like.
Water rights are up to local administrators. But the state of Lower Saxony, where Lüneburg is located, is also dealing with this issue.
Lower Saxony is quite diverse. We have regions where there is a lot of water, but in a big area like Lower Saxony, there are also regions like the northeast of our state that have less groundwater. Since there is so little rain, there is more demand, for example, because farmers have to irrigate their land.
The effects of the warm, dry years can no longer be downplayed. The consequences can be seen everywhere, and it's especially severe in the region around Lüneburg.
Dieser Teich ist ja sonst viel voller.
This pond is usually much fuller. Sadly, the water level is very low. Basically, we're worried about the legacy we're leaving to the next generations, the generations that follow. Water is the foundation for all life.
As we could see on this case about Coca-Cola intention to expand its factory in Lüneburg, we can see the typical problems we face in the case of allocating water rights. In this case, we have a lack of information. We don't know exactly what amount of water is available on the aquifer they are asking for, and also we have political issues about the possibility to allow Coca-Cola to use this amount of water. For that reason, we can, or the white paper suggests that there are mainly two pillars to establish or to improve the allocation of water rights. The first one is to provide information tools that allow the transparency and the decision making in relation with water rights allocation. And secondly, and this is also related with what my colleagues talked about before, is to strengthen the legal system and guarantee the compliance of the establishing norms. That means that it's not only important to establish or to create a regulatory framework to allow the allocation of water rights. It is also important to guarantee its compliance. Sorry. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, in relation with the first pillar, that is information system, we need to establish a proper or accurate environmental flow. As I told at the beginning of the presentation, we need accurate information to establish what is the amount of water we have available to use and what are the uses that can receive this water. For example, we need information about our surface water, our aquifer, water quality and quantity, that means our groundwater water resources, and also we need to include the alternative water resources, like, for example, desalination or reclaimed water reuse, as proper water resources that can be used for different uses like agricultural or industrial uses. For that reason, it's not only important to measure the amount of water, also the quality of these water resources, so we can know how can we use it. We can move to the following slides, to the last one. We can now discuss about the second pillar we identified 2 slides ago, about strengthening the compliance with the norms. We need, or the white paper suggests that is a proper instrument to manage the water rights, the creation and empowering of water agency. That's it, independent bodies in charge of the water rights allocation. We also need that this water agency have to assure the compliance of the existing regulation, but we also need to create or increase social awareness about the lack of water. That means about the situation of water scarcity we are now facing, and for sure will be higher in the following years. This agency also, apart from have a strong regulation to manage water rights, and apart from include mechanisms to raise social awareness about water scarcity, needs the flexibility to act easily and fast as required by the situation. It's not proper to wait till the water scarcity situation arises to reallocate water rights. It should be it should be included as some mechanism to act previously. And finally, and this is also aligned with Guido's presentation, we should act against illegal abstraction of water, because they will also affect the information we have about water resources. And finally, and really important in this regard, we could see in the case of Lüneburg is increasing public participation. It is crucial to have the involvement of all the public stakeholders in the process of water rights allocation if we want to have a proper and a full system for allocating cap water rights. So this is the end of my presentation. I think now we are moving to the panel.
Yes, thank you, Enrique, Guido, and Stella. Very informative presentations. I've been checking the messages on social media, and I would like to ask the audience, all of you who are on Zoom with us, please ask any questions typing in the chat, and also on social media, just comment on the live streaming, and we will be able to call out your questions later on during our seminar. So now I give the word to Enrique, who is going to moderate the next session or a discussion panel.
Thank you, Eva. Well, as explained at the beginning, we have with us today Gary Villalanda from UO, and we also have Rafa Saif from WWF today with us. Maybe we can start from the first presentation, that's it, from Stella's presentation about water pricing. And then I would like to ask you, do you think that we have the right water price?
Thank you, Enrique. I will answer this question as an economist first. So in economics, the price is right when it includes all the costs and all the benefits that link to the consumption of a good or a resource. So if we adopt this definition of right, probably in the case of water, we're missing some elements, especially some cost elements. And those cost elements are not trivial, because are the environmental and the resource costs, are all those implications and impacts related to water use that have wider effects for the quality of the environment and for the availability of water for other users, contemporaneous users of water, and also for future generations. Now, when we talk about water in particular, any questions that have to do with whether the prices are right or not has also to do with the cost, the affordability extensions of water price. Water is a resource that is given by nature, it's for free, it's our right to have access to it. So, you know, any price that would come up against this these positions or would make difficult the access of people, of users to water, would be subject to criticism and would cause social and political issues, or political that have to do with the policies that link to the use of water management. Now, understanding these difficulties and understanding these challenges, we need also to highlight that, you know, despite the fact that we need to have access to resource, you know, the resource has to be at reach and affordable, at the same time, we need to seriously consider what are the effects and the implications of non-efficient use of water. And concluding the answer with, again, an economic insight to what efficiency is about covering as many needs as possible while using the lowest amount possible of a scarce resource.
Thank you, Stella. Maybe if Rafael and Guido allowed me, Gary, you can also now.
Yeah, thank you, Enrique. Thanks a lot. Well, I would like to first thank you all for the invitation to the seminar. I think it's really relevant topic that we will have to address more and more in the future. And you see that lots of things are starting to happen at the EU level. Just so for you to know who I am, I'm a water policy advisor in EURO, which is the European Federation of Water Services. So my answers will be a little bit more oriented towards the urban water sector. So we go straight into the question that you made, Enrique?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The question is if you think that we have the right water price nowadays.
Well, my answer would be definitely no, and I will develop a little bit more the answer. Of course, I will not just leave it there, obviously. If we look more into the urban water sector, and this means water supply and sanitation services for all citizens, as we can see in the OECD report launched in 2020 on the investment needs for the water services, definitely we're hardly covering the costs that we need for complying with the current water acquis, meaning the Water Framework Directive, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, and the Drinking Water Directive. And all this not even considering climate change in terms of what will be needed. So we can really presume, and this is no news for anyone, I guess, that climate change will come with an extra cost, especially in the longer term for the provision of the water services, definitely. And in trying to secure the supply of quality water for human consumption. So we need to look into more into alternative water resources, and these are more costly, but it's not just that. So what we really need to consider is that we need to really improve the implementation of the cost recovery principle of the Water Framework Directive, but also the polluter pays principle. As the Court of Auditors report signed out in 2021, we are very behind in the water sector with complying with this polluter pays principle. So as have been said by many of you all now, water services are a very complex sector, and we have multi-level governance. So we have from national, basin, regional, local levels of government involved. And if we need to address the economic challenges that we are currently facing, even more so if we look at it from the angle of climate change and what this will come with, we really need to consider an innovative governance where we need to find out-of-the-box business and financial solutions. And we need a holistic and systemic approach that considers the value of water and of the water services, and that defines the price of these water services based on technical criteria, trying to avoid as much as possible political interferences. So I will leave it here for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Well, Rafael, now is your turn. Please, as Gary did, if you can introduce yourself briefly, it will be great.
Yeah, thank you, Enrique, and thank you for the opportunity. I work as a policy officer here in WWF, mainly on national issues, but also I have been in contact with this European legislation framework. And to this regard, cost recovery has been covered somehow, but also it has been a very silent issue within the water managers, because for the most part, water resources has been taken for granted. And nowadays, with climate change impact and scarcity problems that we are suffering because of this, for the most part, overexploitation of ecosystem sources, I would say that it has been very difficult for the political angle to cover this. And hence the question has been about the water price policy. I would say it's not so much about the price, but about the valuation and the consideration of water services among the priorities of the society. And in that sense, I mean, as water has been taken for granted, as I said, it is a problem for the society also to accept that water has a cost to be covered, to have it on your house or for allocating for irrigation. And to that regard, I would say that for me, it's not so much about how high or low is the price. It's how we account for the cost and the benefits, as Estela was saying. And if this accountability is transparent, then we can decide, better informed, on how to allocate the burden of covering those costs within different water uses, but also taking into consideration the possibility to provide some subsidies or help to some sectors to cover this cost. But if we do it as we have been doing it in the past, then the water price policy doesn't provide the right incentive, as Estela was suggesting also, no, the capacity of this water pricing policy to really provoke changes in the way we use and allocate water. But also, it's not even covering not only the case for the water services on sanitation, but also the environmental impacts and externalities that is producing, and the choice of allocating water, not this resource cost in the sense of deciding on where to dedicate the efforts of providing water. From the answer in this case, I would say no, but also because the biodiversity and environmental aspects of water pricing has been absolutely underestimated under the policy of water pricing. It has not been considered the environmental problems and issues and impacts that it has caused, but also it has not really covered the need to recover or conserve the environmental sources of water. And in that sense, considering a wider angle of water security, we have been misusing the capacity of the tool to really provide us with a better decision taking in a future and longer term perspective. And in that sense, I would say that we have a big room to improve our water policy system.
Thank you, Rafael. I think we almost agree, all of us. So Guido, do you think that we have the right water price?
We don't have it. I mean, simply look at. I mean, we have seen the video about Doñana. I mean, the last permanent lagoon of Doñana, it has dried out this summer. I mean, this is not only about the flamingos; it's about the lynx, the imperial eagle, all the species that are there, all the migratory birds which pass by Doñana usually, and this year they are not passing, and which are going to which are breeding in the rest of Europe. I mean, next year, let's see how these breeding birds will get back to the rest of Europe. I mean, I fear bad situation. And I mean, it's really not accounting. I mean, if the balance, do we need X tons more of strawberries, or do we want to have a wetland here? I mean, for these issues, I mean, it's not accounting for. Otherwise, it would work very differently.
Okay, thank you, Guido. I don't know if you want to add something to any of our presentation. Now is the time. If not, I think we are on time. We can move forward the next point. I think we have a full agreement in this first question. Let's see what's happening now. We are now moving to the second presentation. That's it about illegal water extraction. That was presented by my colleague Guido. And now I would like to ask you, because we can see how our governments are implementing different sanctions to penalize that, or farmers, organization, whatever, taking water when they shouldn't do that. But do you think that maybe this way of sanctioning is not enough, and maybe we should include, or we should implement any other alternative way to avoid and to sanction illegal extraction? In this case, if you allow me, I will ask directly first to Rafael, and then we move back.
Okay, thank you for giving me the most difficult one. As Guido presented, I mean, illegal water use covers different social aspects. It's not only about the water use or the economic value of water. There is always a sense of this water is for myself. No, this is not a public good, it's a private good in the sense of the use, the later use that we do of water. So from my perspective, I think there should be a combination of both carrot and stick, but also there should be an angle on water security for the users. They have to be responsible on the way they decide on water, and for that they have to have obligations, clearly, these rules and governance structure that really enforce the better use of water, but also they have to find out where is the benefit for them to really keep the water and be responsible users for them by looking after the resource, but also looking after what the neighbors and the other users did. And in that sense, I think water stewardship policies or initiatives are key in this part. This comes with capacity building for the users in the sense of trying to make them understand how they use the water, what can they do to really provide a different solution for the problems they need to do. And also it comes from the authorities with a better participation of these users in the decisions of water. I think it's a personal view on this, and we from WWF try to work a lot on this. We have to move on from the role of the water users as receivers of resources and rather be stewards of what to do with the water in a basin perspective. Stella mentioned the integrated water management structures. And from my perspective, this has been overused by water managers, but it has not really believed by the receivers and the users indeed. So I think we have to open our mind and think outside the box of the water sector in that sense, and really find out the way of a governance system that really put pressure on the water users on how to be responsible on what they do with the water. And this implies decision taking, but also receiving a better service, taking it for granted, to receive water in a secure way, and also links with water security, as we were saying. No?
Thank you, Rafael. Maybe as you mentioned directly, Estela, you can be the following answering this question.
Thank you, Enrique. I agree very much with Rafa that it's all about carrot and sticks. And I would just add that it's also about communicating that this kind of approaches is a very short-sighted solution. The problem is not gone. Scarcity will be found a few meters away or in a couple of years. So it's not a real problem solving. It's not even in the interest of that entity that is going for illegal abstraction. So carrot and sticks and communication of what are the risks of taking such practices as a first best approach to solving water scarcity.
Thank you, Stella. Maybe Gary, you can now answer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I very much agree with what has been said before me. I think penalties are part of the solution, but just one of it, and let's say the most reactive ones. But I think we need to move into more proactive solutions, meaning that we should try to prevent over-extraction in the first place. So, and for that, on the one hand, we may need a sound legal regulatory framework, but it's not just about drafting good legislation. We also need to consider that legislation has to be implemented. And sometimes that is becoming one of the big burdens to really try to implement the measures. And what we should try to start to think of is risk-based approach legislation, which can bring more flexibility, as you mentioned yourself, Enrique, in terms of how to implement these measures. And using what Rafa has said about being, we are all users and we're all beneficiaries of water, and we should be responsible, meaning we need to look into co-responsibility when we talk about sustainable use of water. I think that's the only way of really having water for all the users and all the users. And this comes hand in hand with stakeholder engagement and awareness, because we also have to make people aware of what is happening, what may happen, and give them the tools to learn what they can do and work on this capacity building also for the water users. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Guido, please, you can end with this topic.
Okay, I mean, I could say a lot of things. I think we have to work on perverse subsidies. I mean, we should be subsidizing people which use our common resources illegally. But I've seen that there's been a very nice question from Sandra Bear on LinkedIn, asking on how can we do a better job of communicating the most vulnerable water shortages. And I mean, this brings me also to the illegal water and to overexploitation. I think it's really about connecting what, as Gary said, as what are the benefits we're getting from water. I mean, when I think about water, of course, it's the drinking water, but I'm also an angler. So I mean, I love walking to rivers and to fish the trouts there. And so, I mean, I've seen some sites which are now dry or which are polluted. I mean, this is exactly. I mean, I'm losing values which are important for me, and maybe that's exactly what we should be more communicating about, how this is related to overexploitation, illegal water use, and not respecting the environment.
Sure, maybe we are facing this problem thinking that water is not for us, but I think that there is a theory, the common gods theory, that explains what is water. I don't know if you want to add something. Maybe you also want to answer the question we have from Sandra or LinkedIn about how we can do a better job of communicating the most vulnerable water shortages. No? Then in this case, I will start with Guido. You are not going to be the last one always. Now you can start. And I would like to ask you something that Gary mentioned, because she said something that is also linked with my presentation, is about that we have, or we don't need a stronger legal framework. What we need is to assure the compliance with the norms. What do you think? Do you think that we have a problem of compliance with the legal framework, or we actually need to improve our legal system?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, governance is very complex, but I mean, the major issue for me is the non-compliance with the system. But I mean, in some areas, the system also has to be improved. I mean, if I look at the fines in many of the European countries, which you get if you use water illegally, and maybe you're just paying 400 euros for major water abstraction. I mean, forget about it. I mean, in these areas, you have to improve the legislation as well. But I think the big gap is in the implementation.
Yes. Maybe Gary, Rafael, who wants to answer? Gary?
Yeah, thank you. Just to support what Guido mentioned, and it's a bit in line with what I mentioned myself before. It's about improving the legal framework, yes, because how many countries may have like good provisions where really is stated how much water you get allocated, the rights, the permit, the priority of users. On all these should be based on like sound water balances and based on realistic availability. And there you can see all the demands that you have to match these. And this comes with information. So on the one hand, we need probably better legal framework, yes, but also, as I said, a more flexible one and more easily implementable one. And this comes with a sound water policy that has to putting the water in the center and breaking the silo approach and looking for policy coherence with other sectors too, definitely.
Thank you, Gary. Rafael, you can continue.
Yes, I very much agree, but to be a little bit outside of this, I would say that for the most part, policies has not been developed under a clear objective. And I think for the most part, in most countries, water managers has only the objective of allocating water for whatever is needed. And I think that we have to start thinking about the future in a different way. We have to start, as Estela was mentioning, how to integrate risk on this decision, because the risk will bring trade-off, which we will have to accept or neglect, I guess, but we have to have it in mind when we decide how strategically coordinate policies or develop objectives in the longer term. And it's very easy to write in a paper that we want to distribute water in a sustainable system and whatever, but what does this imply in reality? It has to be related with what implication has for the environment, what trade-offs are we willing to accept when we build a dam, build an allocation system, or we assume a certain point of contamination to water bodies because we are going to use water. And I think that water managers and policymakers in the longer term have to start thinking about what implication has the decision of the present will have in the near future, because climate change is speeding up the need to take this decision with with a wider view, because if not, we are going to be surprised 1 year and again 1 year and again 1 year with scarcity problems, floods problems, extreme phenomena, frequency, intensity, and so on. So in that sense, I think economic instruments, which is part of this governance, I think they have to provide also what in economics is trade-offs, no, and externalities, and bring in this inside the policy definition. And regarding specifically what the question asks about the allocation permits and so on, I think this dimension should be incorporated in this also, because for the most part, water rights talk about how to allocate the water, but not how to pay for that water or how to incorporate the economic decision in this. And I think it's something that it has to be explored, but it also has to be incorporated to this risk analysis that we are facing.
Thank you, Rafael. Estela, do you want to add something?
Yes, Enrique, a general comment that answers your last question and a more specific addressing of the question. I think a key word that probably was not too much referred today was the word interdisciplinary. The addressing of the issues that relate to the proper management of water and to good governance of water necessitate interdisciplinary approach and interdisciplinary solutions and the dialogue between different disciplines. And this dialogue can feed governance structures that are related to water, but also policies that target water, and also the regulatory framework that is already in place or will be enforced even more to make sure that, you know, illegal practices or malpractices are not encouraged and are not implemented. And by this, I mean that we should be open to discuss with other disciplines and experts and professionals from different fields that can help us to understand what should be the right words and the right approach to different sectors, to different producers, to different users. How should we approach agricultural producers? How should we approach industry? What are the key issues in industry and in agricultural production that in the end of the day make these producers to opt for illegal practices or over-exhaustion of the resource if they do it? Okay, I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying that these particular producers or sectors are the ones and only to blame for. So interdisciplinary approach to the problem and to the solutions and to the governance as well. And the second word that has not been referred to much today, and it's very important, is technology, technological innovation. We have now technological tools and solutions that can facilitate the monitoring of the water services, water networks, water allocation, irrigation, abstraction. We have those technologies, and in this project we have seen some very nice ideas in the making that can support not only the monitoring, not only the achievement of targets that have to do with water management, but also the implementation of you know, the regulatory framework and of the laws and even the sanctions that have to come when malpractices are identified. So maybe it's time to consider the importance of investing in the sector and upgrading the infrastructure and the technology that is used in order to serve water management and water governance targets.
Thank you, Stella. Eva, do we have time for one more question?
I think we do. I just wanted to bring in some comments from social media we've been receiving. Many people commented on the need to communicate the urgency of tackling water issues. It is not just a nice to have. It's not something we can deal with as time goes by. It is literally the question of life and death in many situations, more so in the global south, as Sandra pointed out, who previously asked the question, but also in Europe, as we've seen with climate change, water is a key issue, and there are certain health issues which can be exacerbated by the lack of water or lack of access to to water. So this is something we have been in the project emphasizing, that this is a very urgent situation to solve. And as Stella mentioned, we have solutions, we have technological solutions. It's really the question to make decisions, to use them, and to find a way to implement the legislation which is already drafted. But then, Enrique, please go and ask the last question, and then.
Yes, the last question I think is related with all with your comments. We have a way, we have solutions to improve this situation. So why we are not applying for them? Do you think that there exists a lack of political willingness to avoid this lack of water governance? Who wants to start? Maybe Gary, are you asking? Yeah.
I was not really asking, but I can start. Yeah, it's fine. Maybe just 1 second before coming into this question. I would like to react to Stella's comment when she was mentioning innovation. This brings us back to, do we have the right price? Because the problem with innovation when we're talking about technology is the price of it behind. So this is kind of like closing the loop and bringing us back to the first question kind of again. And looking now into this question that you posed about, is there a lack of political willingness to think? Probably that's a bit too simplistic question. And as we say, water is a very complex sector. Maybe the problem is not just the political willingness, it's all the water governance scheme behind it. Maybe what we need to improve and reconsider is the governance scheme behind water in all its different multi-stakeholder and multi-government levels involved. And probably because we need to understand that water governance is not an end itself, it's a means to an end. And the end should be having the sound water policies that really allows us to have water now and in the future. So rather than only just political willingness, maybe it's looking more into how we need to improve the governance of the water, which includes politicians and every other stakeholder. So I would say stakeholders' engagement is fundamental for this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Rafael?
Yeah, following the last mention that Gary did, I mean, politicians are all of us, I would say. I have a colleague of mine always telling me this whenever we talk about Doñana, and we are part of the problem there. Because there is no benefit for the politicians to talk about water issues on the longer term, water as a general rule, because nobody takes care about this. No, in developed world, to say so, water is secure for the most part, and whenever there's a problem, there will be somebody, no, in a very unknown body or authority or whatever, that is going to bring the solution to this in an urgency or in a better or worse way. But also in the development world, it is the same. I mean, somebody is going to find out the way to do it. And I think the problem is that we have to start thinking about what we can do as individuals as solving the problem, and what we have to ask to these water managers, politicians, and so on, to really provide them with the right incentive to do the things that we feel that is needed. And in that sense, I think stakeholder, it's key, obviously, because we have to be part of that, but also because I think we have to better understand the risk behind of not having water. Whenever we have some kind of a scarcity of something that we need every day, then energy, or taking for granted energy crisis in Europe right now, we move on and politicians start doing something different and even innovate. So I don't know if we have been, and maybe this is kind of a little bit controversial, I don't know if we have been also very good at communicating the very good systems for allocating water that we have, because we have taken water for granted, as I said before, because we have been very good at providing water for specific issues, and we have forgot about the implications of that. And right now, we don't have the choice to do that. We have to do something different. And given the urgency to communicate about this need, I think we have to start thinking about telling the truth without any filters about this issue.
Guido and Stella, maybe you can end this answering this question.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's an important question, and I mean, very often politicians, they look at the next, what can be done within the next 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, they're in power for a limited time. They have to win the next elections, or they want to win the next election. So very often they go for the easy solutions. As Rafa was saying, I mean, it's very easy just to put a water tanker there and to provide people with the drinking water they might need. Maybe not all the water which the irrigators need. I mean, in the Doñana video, we had the political party requesting a new dam to be built and a new transfer to be built, and then the water should be carried there from other areas. And I mean, there have been requests already to transfer water to Spain from France or far away, maybe from Germany. And I mean, we have seen how low the water flows are in the Rhine River. But I mean, with these solutions, we forget and we lose the other values associated with water. I mean, for water, it's not only that the water is there in the pond. I mean, as I mentioned before, water for me is fish, biodiversity, landscape, swimming, these things. And I mean, that requires much more complex approaches, much more listening to people. And then there's also the end to the technical solutions. We have to think about governance. Only with the technical solutions we might solve individual problems, but the governance and of course the financing, which is part of this, because otherwise things don't work, we have to address it if we want to go for long-term solutions. I mean, I want to go for it, but not everybody wants to do this.
Stella, your final minutes.
Thank you, Enrique. I would refrain from putting the blame just on one stakeholder group. So I agree with Gary that politicians, like other stakeholders, have their fair share of responsibility. Although I wouldn't put exactly the same amount of responsibility on the shoulders of the different stakeholders. What I would expect, though, and I'm hoping to see being materialized in ASAP, basically, is the adoption of scientific evidence in priority and goal setting. The scientific community is screaming very loud, is shouting on the problems and challenges that we are facing and we will be facing in the near future. Evidence is there, data are there, and I would like to see policymakers, politicians to adopt an agenda that makes use of this scientific evidence. And this important stock of knowledge and information that is coming from the scientific community to be used so as to set the priorities and set the actions so as to overcome these great challenges that we are facing, not only at South European level, but at European, at regional, and at global level.
Well, Eva, we have
see some hands up from Rafael.
Yeah, we have 2 hands up. Okay, who starts? I think Gary was first.
Yeah, Gary was first.
Yeah. Okay.
It was Rafa first, but I will be super quick.
Okay,
just to
Rafa.
support what Stella mentioned. I hope we don't see the same as what this movie Don't Look Up shows. So we have the scientific evidence. Please don't make the same mistakes with the water.
I need the obligation to react to that because I absolutely agree with you, Stella. I think it's absolutely key, but there is something to blame to the scientific community on this, because many times science-based and approaches lack of the first thought about we are doing science for management or we are doing science for something. And that's something that we have to change. And in many parts I would not say globally, but in Europe, for example, there has been increasing number of papers, publications, information coming from university that ends up in a desk of a politician without any kind of understanding, translation into management policies and so on, because once they don't care about that, but also they don't even have the capacity to understand that. And that's a big problem, because in the end, if science only informs science and scientifics, there's no room for managers, stakeholders, society in general to understand what are the risks, what are the consequences, and what are the decisions to be taken. And I think it's also to blame, and sorry for this, but it's also to blame to the scientific community to really make science only for them. And I think there should be more efforts on translating this into policy, to say so.
If I may, Enrique,
okay, just quickly.
Yes, please.
In support of my community, I can tell that there is a big deal of effort taking place here right now, that we are trying to get out of our comfort zone and to communicate in simple words what we find and what we do. And there are many colleagues out there that are doing this and many initiatives. So I think that is a problem that is well understood, that we need to communicate clearly and in a very simple way what our work and the results of our work tell. And of course, as I said, it's an interdisciplinary task here that we need to fulfill. So communication experts, NGOs, civil society, all those entities that come with these talents and with these capacities to transmit the message should join forces. So I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you, Stella, and thank you, Rafa, as well for your comment. I think it's very true, and within our initiative, we really try to break down the barriers between the different disciplines. And I think Stella, Guido, and Enrique can attest to this, that I have been reminding them every single meeting that this is not for us to feel comfortable about talking about this. So this is really to provoke thoughts. And during the series of the seminars, we engage with very different stakeholders, and I've seen a variety of perspectives coming into force, and it has been wonderful to see what happens when people from different backgrounds and different interests and different knowledge areas come together and understand the need for action. And I think this is probably the best way to end this series of seminars, that water scarcity is a very, very complex issue, but we have solutions for it, and we have a lot of will from a lot of different people. It is really a way to get us together and make the decisions at the level where they most count. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for taking part today, all the viewers and all the questions. And please reach out to us on social media and on our website. You can find our contact details, and we would love to hear more from everyone who's been listening to us.
Thanks a lot for the invitation and for the panel. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
And a big applause to Eva for organizing all these webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And Water Europe for helping us hosting it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure. Take care.